we haven't talked
You'd
much
be giving
about
up a lot
Klay
of points
Thompson.
on the defensive
exactly.
end,
We haven't talked much about Klay Thompson because we know that's not a name that a lot of people are leaning to. Seeing him in the latter part of his years with the Golden State, they're looking totally different. He's not as good as he used to be. He's not the two-way player that he used to be anymore. Kyle, you brought up the factor of the injury history, of course, and then the play in general.
The just not being good.
Not being good anymore.
Yeah.
But his name is his name. And if it's not Golden State, maybe someone does pay him that 1+1 type of deal, give him a balloon payment, as you guys mentioned. The difference there between he and Paul George is Paul George is still all-star level type of player with Klay Thompson.
The guy who got all NBA
anymore.
votes versus someone who got taken out of the lineup for a rookie.
Right. So where would the interest level be? Clearly for you, it doesn't seem like it there, but for the Sixer fans out there.
I mean, look, here's the problem with Klay Thompson. It's not that he can't play a role. It's that the money that you would want to sign him for, there would be no reason for him to leave Golden State.
Right.
Like, he's been there so long. He's leaving at this point to get a major payday. And like, I understand that, right? He's won everything there is to win in Golden State. Decorated career, beloved player there. I don't think anyone with the Warriors, including fans, are going to begrudge him if Orlando, for example, was like, hey, we'll give you 3 for 90 or 3 for 75, like whatever it might be.
I would never.
That would be insane.
I would not have any interest in that.
No shot I would give him that type of money. Would I be interested in like mid-level ranges? Sure, because I do think
So
the
like
high volume
like
shooting.
225, 230, something like that? Or would you go 3 or 4 years? I would not.
I prefer
No,
KCP
2
over
to 3 years, I think. Preferably a 1+1, honestly, but you might be able to convince me somewhere in the 2 to 3 range if the dollar value is low enough. But I think at that point he just stays in Golden State. Like maybe they are so concerned with what their tax bill has been that they say we're not paying that regardless. He physically is just in such a worse place now than prior to the knee and Achilles injuries that he suffered, that he went from being a reliable, at times even like genuinely great perimeter defender to he is a turnstile. Like he is exactly what we've talked about on the show, like someone who's not going to help with point of attack or perimeter defense where you're getting beat a lot, you're putting lots of pressure on Joel, and so that's impacting his rebounding. He's forced to move around a lot more. And then on the other end of the floor, he's just not as dynamic in terms of the movement and the off-ball shooting. I think peak Klay Thompson, like we've said with Paul George, would have been an incredible fit next to Joel Embiid, depending on who the other guy is, who the primary creator is on the perimeter. I don't see it anymore. He's too much of a stationary guy. Like he'd be fine. He'd be great in a role where he's in the weak side corner on a Joel post up, ball swings to him. He certainly is going to hit a lot of threes on the weak side in a swing situation. But am I paying a premium for that? Probably not, because if he comes here or goes anywhere but Golden State, he's going to expect a role befitting whatever money he makes and the stature he's had in his career. I'm just not willing to give him that based on the decline we've seen over multiple seasons now. This is because, look, there have been guys
ever since he came back from the injuries.
Correct. Like there have been guys, I think James Harden, Chris Paul are probably two good examples of guys that had one down season, like really bad year after injuries, and it was the same, both hammies, right? Both hamstring injuries. They came back and people were like, oh, that guy might be washed, blah, blah, blah. And then still were able to, after that, bounce back, have very productive careers. The issue with Klay at this point is this is like a 3-year downturn. This is not, hey, he had a bad year shooting, or hey, he had one bad defensive year on a Golden State team that's kind of stuck between eras. I have been concerned about him for a long time now. So, yeah, I don't have much interest in him at any kind of high dollar value, and certainly not the years. You could convince me if everything falls through and it's just like, hey, we'll pay you 1 year at a crazy number. Okay, maybe, but I still...
Like a JJ type of number, or is that too high? Because JJ got, what, 20, 21? That first year?
I mean, that was a very different collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah,
like 20,
right.
yeah, I'd do 20 now.
I think I'd do 1 for 20, yeah. But even so, it still goes back to what I was.
Well, and then if you do that, you
mad
can set
about.
yourself up for free agency next summer.
But it's what I'm saying. It's like part of the reason I don't like hope a trade becomes available is they do need to build a real team at some point. You can't just every single season turn it over and turn it over. There does need to be some degree of continuity and cohesion and understanding between Joel, Tyrese, and whoever else is out there on the floor with them. And I just don't know how you accomplish that if your fallback plan is, well, we're going to sign guys to multiple 1 for 25 or 1 for 20, 2 for 50 type of deals, knowing that they're likely to move on and you're still waiting for the cavalry to come.
So my response to that, since I feel like that's what this show is, there isn't continuity usually in the 5 through 10. The continuity you need is get that third player locked down, and then you can find the supporting pieces. What we're debating here, first, and again, to be clear, we both agreed 1-year deals to preserve cap space, complete non-starter. No go, absolutely. Really what you need to do to have tradable contracts to make that next jump, because if the Sixers strike out on their third star, Daryl is going to be third star hunting. That's just going to be the way that this team is operated on, and I don't necessarily disagree. Everything is going to be in flux until that happens. The way you build a team and the way you get tradable contracts are largely the same. You pursue guys who would play better in your environment than they have elsewhere, sign them to good deals that can be traded in the future, so you get the best of both worlds. You get both a team being built in a short term and tradable contracts and draft picks that can be used to get a third star if they ever become
Sounds
available.
like 3 for 75 for Kelly Oubre, baby.
Oh, God, no. So really,
Phil, where you at?
while we had a little bit of a manufactured debate to start, really what Kyle and I are arguing for is pretty much the same thing. The way you build a team is the same way as you build tradable trade chips. It's just the details are going to be very important. It's really hard to debate this because, like Klay, could Klay be, if you had Klay in the Buddy Hield role, could he succeed in that? Sure. I don't want to give him a contract more than 2 years in length. But if you give him one for this year and next year, that's a reasonable price, and you could use him at least as salary filler. You could both fill a role and give you some kind of stability, and then also be tradable if a star does become available, especially if you still have 4 or 5 or 6 draft picks to trade. If you get someone like KCP, absolutely that could be tradable. And frankly, at this stage, I would prioritize KCP over Klay Thompson, which I never thought I would say at any point in their respective basketball
Pretty
careers.
easily,
But
too.
I think we're at that point. But if you can get him on I don't think you can get him on a 2-year deal. First of all, I think that would have to be a 4-year. But if it's a player like that that you believe will be a contributor over the course of a 3 or 4-year contract, I'm not against that either. I think like I said, what Kyle and I are arguing for is largely the same thing. You have to get good players on team-friendly deals, or at least deals that don't have negative trade value. And if that, hopefully that would lead to building a team too, because the only way for them to have trade value or for their trade value to increase is for them to succeed in the roles. It's largely the same thing.
And the reason why you just kind of went over the KCP part, just reason by, is because look, many of you have been in here before, but for the new people who are joining the show, we've talked about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, even with the others, because just as a piece that goes along as you get that third guy, superstar type player, but then you add a role player like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, maybe, depending on what the contract looks like, because that's the type of player that you want, of course, as a wing player, defensively, two-way player, can knock down shots, not afraid to put the ball down on the floor and finish at the basket as well. So champion twice already and played a big role in both. And that's when we bring up the Klay Thompson part, he was just linked to Klay Thompson in the story from Jake Fisher that we had to bring him up. But again, bringing him up now is just a part of the combination with Klay Thompson, because we've talked about him before, even if you were to acquire one of those other star players like Paul George, the names that we thrown out there, Jimmy Butler, in the event that you could add that player to the team. So
I would say
he's
too,
a really good fit on any team. Just like somebody said that Klay Thompson can fit on any team, Hall of Fame Klay Thompson, for what he was, which is why they won so many championships. Now, the role that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope plays in this NBA, in today's NBA, he can fit with any team in the league, and that would be a nice fit here.
We all silly like the mayor.